All right. Hello, how's everyone doing today? I am here with a pale carbon copy of Murray Rothbard, as he has often been referred to. My good friend Walter Block. How are you today?
A pale carbon copy of Murray Rothbard is an honor.
I guess my first question, and this is more, I guess, just a wondering, because one of the things that I've noticed that's sort of unfortunate when people engage in political disagreements is sort of they like the need to like distort or straw man like their opponents. Like Ayn Rand, for example, was very clear what she meant by ethical egoism and selfishness. And many objectivists are as well. And yet, even today, people assume it means not giving a shit about other people and stepping on people, even though she never defined it that way. And I guess I'm just curious, like, why people feel the need to sort of just distort what their opponents are saying.
Well, I think, what is it in law school? They teach you if you can't win on the facts, work on the law. If you can't work on the law, if you can't win on the law, work on the facts. If you can't win on the law or the facts, scream. That's my understanding of what they tell law students. And it seems reasonable that if you are losing the debate and you want to win the debate, you kick them in the crotch. Namely, you engage in non-market Marquis of Queensberry activity. Well, these lefties, they can't win on the facts. They can't win on the law. They can't win on justice. They can't win on anything. So what they do is they say, well, you're a Nazi, or you're a fascist, or you're a racist, or whatever. Well, I mean, from their point of view, it's perfectly rational. I mean, if you want to win the debate and you don't have anything on your side that's legitimate,
sure,
you ascribe views to your enemies that they never in a million years would uphold, and then you attack that. You make a straw man and you attack the straw man. Yeah. For example, the New York Times, with me and voluntary slavery. What they were doing is they were interviewing a whole bunch of people that were vaguely associated with Rand Paul. This is in 2015 when Rand Paul was a possible presidential contender for the Republican Party. And their thesis was, look at the maniacs that Rand Paul hangs around with, and therefore Rand Paul is no good. Well, one of the maniacs was me, and one of my maniacal ideas was slavery. I favored slavery, which, for a libertarian is a little crazy. And I try to explain to them the difference between voluntary slavery and actual slavery. And they concocted their coverage in such a way that they accused me of favoring actual slavery. And then 15 paragraphs later, they said, well, he didn't really do that. So the average person, you can see the background of Loyola University. The president of Loyola University, an average intelligent reader, wrote a thing saying, well, Block is a disgrace to Loyola. He favors slavery. We're against slavery. Sure. And then what really bothered me, it didn't bother me that much that the New York Times did this. Because they're on the left, and based on what I said, they have no arguments, so they might as well attack people for saying that, make straw men and attack the straw men. But what really bugged me was what's this guy's name from Reason? Who you remember the guy from Reason?
Nick Gillespie, the main one.
Nick Gillespie, who is Reason is supposedly a libertarian organization. And what Nick Gillespie did is he reported that I favored slavery, and he didn't say voluntary slavery. And then more recently, there's this guy from the AEIR in Massachusetts, which is a good group headed up by my former student, Ed Stringham. And he's also doing the same thing. So it's one thing when the left does that,
sure,
which is very bad. But when a libertarian does that, what's that?
Yeah, no, it is upsetting. I mean, one of the things that I find annoying is people seem to want to, criticize, people moral character instead of the quality of their arguments. One of my favorite chapter in Isabella Peterson's book, Out of the Machine, is a chapter called The Humanitarian with the Guillotine, where she talks about how most of the evil in the world is done by people who mean well, which I think is accurate. And that's that's somewhat, similar. And I think to, to Adam Smith's invisible hand in a way that, people who benefit other people don't necessarily do it intentionally. Mises described consumers as callous and cold-hearted without consideration for other people. So you can have people who, benefit people without their intent. But I think people have sort of this like comic book cartoonish way often of viewing people. And even a lot of libertarians do it when it comes to the state. Like, I don't think most state actors are bad intentioned. I think that they just have wrong ideas. Like, most bureaucrats probably don't think, oh, this is going to unemploy so many people. Oh, this is going to lead to thousands or millions of deaths. They probably mean well. They're just, what they did Adolf Hitler say, it's a lucky thing for governments that the people they administer do not think. So I think that's more what it is. And you can be bad intended and do good, and you can be good intended and do bad. And a lot of, and I think the leftist worldview seems like there's no distinction between intentions and results.
Well, this idea of being bad intentioned and doing well must be very rare. In other words, I'm a bad guy, so I'm aiming to shoot you.
Right.
And I miss, and I hit the guy who's right behind you with a knife, and he's about to murder you.
Right.
So I intended to murder you, an innocent person, but I missed, and I killed the guy in the act of murdering you. So, but that must be very rare.
No, but I'm saying, let's just say theoretically, let's say someone doesn't understand economics and they say, I'm against minimum wage because I want poor people to be poor and not get $15 an hour because I don't think they're worth it. So that's a person who's against a minimum wage, but not which is good because minimum wage unemploys these people, but his intention behind it is not good necessarily, right?
I agree with you, but I'm just talking about the quantity. I think that the quantity of people who are well-intentioned and ignorant is 99%.
Right.
Whereas the quantity of people who are evil-intentioned and do good somehow,
right.
Like when I just shot your murderer, must be very rare. But I agree that both concepts are
sure.
coherent.
No, it probably is, but this is why I think we have to sort of be social scientists and judge things by their effects and not just what's in the hearts of people. I mean, when Cuomo killed thousands of elderly people, my father said, do you think he meant to? And I said, what difference does that make? Oh, I didn't mean to kill these people, so it's okay,
Well, not that it's okay, but we have to make a distinction between an accident and a crime.
Right.
In other words, I hit your car, and I didn't mean to. It's just an accident.
Right.
Right. On the other hand, if I intentionally rammed into your car, I'm a criminal. So I don't think intentions are irrelevant. Intentions are relevant to what kind of punishment we give you. And if the intentions were good and I just hit your car by accident, well, it's just a tort. I have to pay for your car. Sure. But if I purposely rammed into your car, I should be in jail.
Sure.
So intentions are relevant, but obviously you're correct in saying that the effects are pretty important too.
Sure. No, I'm not saying intentions don't matter. I think they're secondary, maybe a better way of putting it, not primary.
Well, they're important in terms of criminality because look, if I slip on a banana peel and then punch you in the nose because I'm flailing around,
right?
Well, I'm not really a bad guy, but I did punch you in the nose,
right? So yeah, no, I agree. But so for example, and I don't know if Rothbard meant this or was just being colorful, but in one of his books, The Ethics of Liberty, For Liberty, I don't remember which one, he said a sentence which I thought was total nonsense, which was, even if libertarianism would lead to suffering of 98% of humanity, I would still have to advocate for it because it's the most moral and ethical system there is. It just so happens that that's not the case, and it would lead to great things. And I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. Any system that leads to suffering for 98% of the population, by definition, would not be ethical. What does ethics mean if not humanity being better off? Right?
Well, that's a very, very important point that you're raising, a very ticklish issue. And I share your ignorance, namely, you can't tell the difference between the ethics of liberty and
Order liberty.
For a New Liberty. I mean, I've read them both many times, but
Right.
you sometimes forget what he said where.
Right.
My way of looking at that one is, it is logically impossible for libertarianism to lead for suffering, because all libertarianism says is, don't initiate violence against people. Now,
Okay.
look, we could concoct a world where, if I don't know why I'm punching you and shooting you all the time, but that
And
the
yet we're
only
still friends.
very, very good friends.
Yeah.
But I suppose we could concoct a world where the only way to help you would be to punch you. Maybe you're a masochist or something like that.
Sure.
But even if you were a masochist, then it wouldn't really be an initiation of violence any more than it would be when you get a masseuse, digging into your shoulders, and it hurts a little, right?
Right.
It's hardly a violation of rights. So, but I did want to clarify the difference between voluntary slavery and coercive slavery just in 1 minute,
Sure.
because a lot of listeners to this might say, well, what's this voluntary slavery? The slavery is slavery, and if you favor slavery, you're not a good guy. You're evil.
Right.
And the example I give, and here I use not you but my son. I say, suppose, assume my son had a horrible disease, and the only way to cure him is $20 million. And I don't have anything like $20 million. And you, Dan, are a very rich guy, and you've long wanted to be your slave. And we make a deal. You give me the 20 million, I give it to my son's doctors, I save his life. And as we know, with all voluntary trade, without any exceptions whatsoever, in the ex ante sense, we both gain.
Sure.
I gain because I value his life more than my freedom. You gain because you value my servitude more than the 20 million.
Sure.
Case closed. Is that justified? Well, it's a little weird, but yeah, it's justified. And now you're whipping me on your plantation, and I call the cop, and I say, hey, he's whipping me, and you show the bill of sale, and the cop should say, shut up, Walter. You signed away your freedom to not be pummeled by Dan. So, he's justified in doing it. So that's the argument.
Sure.
And I think there's divisiveness. Murray disagreed with me on this.
Yeah.
Robert Nozick agreed with me. I think Murray is a better philosopher, economist, legal theorist than Nozick, but on this one, I agree with Nozick. And I think libertarians are split. I won't say down the middle. I don't know what the proportions are, but it's a divisive issue. And, there are other divisive issues among libertarians. There's abortion, there's immigration. There are several issues where we libertarians disagree with each other. And I don't know, maybe we're just not smart enough to reconcile these things, but there are disagreements. But I think my position is certainly to be distinguished from coercive slavery.
Sure.
I mean, that's an abomination. And the New York Times and Gillespie, and what's the name of this guy, the most recent guy?
Wright?
Robert Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T.
Yeah.
And as you said before, he's sort of a snotty young kid who is, I forget the word you used, but I wrote him, I'm sorry?
Pompous, but yes.
Pompous, snotty, whatever.
Yeah.
I wrote him and saying, well, how about clarifying this, or how about apologizing, or at least clarifying? And he wrote me this nasty note about, stop bothering me.
Right.
Kind of thing. Strange.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I agree with you. I support voluntary slavery. Although I am curious, is there an exit clause? Because like if someone agrees to marry someone, there's an exit clause in terms of a divorce, right? I mean, most contracts have that. Most contracts have, if you change your mind, here are the things that you can do to get out of it.
Well, look, you have a lovely red shirt.
Sure.
There's no exit clause there. You bring that shirt back, and they're going to tell you to take a hike. Yes, there are exit clauses in certain contracts, but not necessarily so, right?
Right.
So, look, if there was an exit clause, then it would be more like, what do they call it? Oh, I'm getting senile. I can't think of, what is it when you, servitude, people would come over to the United States and have to work for somebody for 7 years. What was that? What was that called? Indentured servitude.
Right.
Indentured servitude had a 7-year contract, and
Right.
There was an exit clause. In 7 years, you're free.
Right.
And the voluntary slavery contract could have that. It could be for 7 years, but you have a right to kill me because slaves were killed, and
Right.
that was lawful. Or it need not have an exit clause, depending upon the contract that you and I signed when you gave me that $20 million.
Sure. No, I understand. I would agree with that. Now, one topic, and this is sort of something that I think a lot of critiques that I've heard against libertarianism is most people say, look, I agree with libertarians that that there should be a reduction in coercion, but there are unfortunately some cases where in order to prevent bigger acts of coercion, we have to commit small acts of coercion, or in order to prevent it, right? So like I have a friend who's a lefty, and he said, look, I know that if I advocate to, let's say, take $1 million from a millionaire, that's not my property and that's wrong. But I also know that the $1,000 can go to prevent a guy from starving to death, whereas the guy who's a millionaire doesn't need that to live. So yes, it's wrong and unfortunate, but if we're really interested in reducing harm to people, isn't up to saving someone's life from starvation worth taking $1,000 from someone who yes, maybe $1,000 poorer the result, but can still live a good quality life?
Well, you're into facts. The best literary case of this is Jean Valjean, who stole a loaf of bread to feed his kid. Otherwise, the kid would starve. In one of the French,
Les Miserables, yeah.
Les Miserables, one of the French famous novels.
Yeah.
Well, if we let him get away with that, what about the baker? There'll be no bakers. There'll be no bread. So, Henry Hazlitt and other good economists saying, don't look just at the effects of right now, but look on the effects in the future. Don't look at the effects just on one person, but look on the effects of everybody. If we tell Jean Valjean, well, look, the baker had 300 loaves of bread, and you just took one and you fed your kid and you kept your kid alive, so we're not going to punish you. Well, now what's going to happen? What's going to happen is Jean Valjean is going to come back next week, and his buddies will come back next week, and they'll start taking more bread from bakers, and the baker will go broke, and there'll be no more bakers, and then there'll be no more bread, and then there'll be no more kids. So, I mean, it sounds callous. It sounds cruel, because our hearts go out to Jean Valjean. He's just trying to save his kid. But, if you do it by stealing. Now, this reminds me of another thing. There was a guy in Canada who put an ad in the paper saying, I need a liver for my son. My son will die without a liver. And I'm willing to pay, I forget what it was, $1 million or $5 million. You know what they did to that father?
What?
They put him in jail.
Right.
Now, here was a father who was trying to save his kid, just like Jean Valjean, only he wasn't trying to steal. He was trying to make a bargain.
Right.
But somehow our friends on the left, they have this idea that commodification is evil,
Sure.
That is certain things. It's okay for shirts and maybe wristwatches and shoelaces. But for important things like used body parts, like a liver or a kidney or something, you can't do that because that's evil.
Sure.
Well, as a result, we have a lot of people who go to the grave because they can't get an organ. And then a lot of other people go to the grave with perfectly good organs, like, they call motorcycle drivers donor mobiles. Because people your age are more likely to be on a motorcycle than people my age. And, my age, you get a liver from me, it's, it's got a shelf life of 5 years or something. Whereas you're a young guy, it's got a shelf life of 70 years or something like that. So here we have a very sharp contrast. Two men are trying to save their son or their children's lives. And one is doing it by stealing and the other is doing it by trying to make a bargain. Right. And this is a gigantic difference that we have to adhere to.
Sure. No, I agree. Now, I think the rebuttal to that would be, well, it's only okay in situations where you need to do it to save life, that we don't just give a blanket, well, you could steal now and it saved his life and it's okay, but you actually have to prove that, no, this is necessary to save a life or
look, if I saw you at the edge of a bridge ready to jump in,
yeah,
you know what I would do? I would grab you.
Right.
I would kidnap you and I would hold you. And I would say, well, why are you committing suicide? And if you said, well, your girlfriend left, I'd say, well, there are plenty of other girls. If you said you didn't pass an exam, plenty of other exams.
Right.
If you said, well, I'm in a 4th-degree cancer and the morphine no longer works and it's excruciating and I can't stand it anymore, I'd let you go.
Right.
But if you said one of the first 2 things about a girl or an exam, I would kidnap you.
Right.
But I would be a criminal.
Right.
And I should be punished for it. My example of this is the Libertarian concentration camp guard. So what's the Libertarian concentration camp guard? Well, every concentration camp guard has to kill, say, 100 Jews and gypsies and blacks and gays or whatever. You have a quota, 100.
Okay.
So what I do is I sneak in and I become a concentration camp guard. I'm an Aryan, so I can do this. And I only kill 90.
Right.
If I killed 89, they would find out about me. So I have to kill at least 90, but I save 10.
Right.
I save 10 every day.
Right.
And now World War II ends, and it's a week later, and I killed, 7 times 90, 630 people. I'm a pretty bad guy. I've been killing 630 people, but I saved 70.
Right.
And now I'm put in the dock.
Yeah.
And I'm honest. I don't try to deny that I kill people. I'm an honest Aryan, Libertarian concentration camp guard. And I say, yeah, I killed them. And they said, well, why'd you do it? Well, I wanted to save people, and I save 10 people every day. Mm-hmm. And what should happen to me is first they should give me a ticker tape parade because I saved 70 people. I'm a good guy. Secondly, I should appeal to all the heirs of the 630 people that I killed and say, look, I wish I could have saved your uncle, your grandmother, your kid. I just did it at random. I just took 10 people every day and I saved them. And if you feel that I should be put to death for killing your grandparents or whoever it is, well, first you have to have a ticker tape parade for me, and now I'm ready to suffer the consequences. So I'm trying to have my cake and eat it too. Right. I'm trying to show that you can violate the non-aggression principle for good purposes. Good purposes here is saving 10 people a day, but if you do, you have to pay the penalty. Right. And I should have to pay the penalty. And if one of those 630 heirs says thumbs down, well, then I go to the gallows. My hope is that all of them, all 630 will say, I would have done that too. You're a virtuous guy. Yes, you killed 630 people. Now, you know what the New York Times is going to say, or
you support
Robert Wright,
you support the Holocaust.
Yeah, and Nick Gillespie is going to say, well, he's a Nazi. he's an Aryan Nazi. He's a white supremacist. No, not well. I'm a white supremacist in some ways, but
oh, that's an interesting conversation.
That's a different issue. But I'm a racist or a Nazi or whatever it is. No, I'm trying to understand libertarianism, and my understanding of libertarianism, you go a little deeper than the non-aggression principle, namely its punishment theory.
Yeah.
What should the punishment be for me? And I've already said what the punishment should be for me, but it's virtuous to violate the non-aggression principle. Just as it was virtuous when I violated the non-aggression principle when I grabbed you to save you from suicide. Yeah. Now, I'm not going to keep you for the rest of your life, but I'll keep you for a week or two and try to get you some therapy. I have a friend, Michael Adelstein, is a great therapist. I'm going to get him on your case, and he'll tell you that there are plenty of other girls out there and that there are plenty of other exams and whatever. He'll save your life. But after 2 weeks, and I'm going to slap you around if you don't pay attention to him. Right. I'm going to really violate the non-aggression principle because I want to save your life.
Right. Yeah. Now you did say something interesting, that you said you're white supremacist in some ways. What do you mean by that?
I didn't say it again. I didn't hear you.
You just said you're a white supremacist in some way.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, whites are better than blacks at swimming. Well, I'm a white supremacist. Well, of course, blacks are better than whites at basketball.
Sure. And I don't think that makes you a white supremacist. But
well, I just said that they're supreme. Whites are supreme in swimming.
Well, I think people mean in the aggregate, not in individual issues.
I don't care what they mean. What I mean is that whites are supreme in swimming. You go to the swimming pool in the Olympics and there are no blacks there. And it's not because they're not allowed in the pool. It's they're not good swimmers. Their body is too muscular or something. I'm not sure why. You go to the NBA and what do you see? or you go to the Olympics in the finals of the 100 yards or the marathon or anything, and you see one or two whites, and in jazz, blacks are supreme, and in Baroque music, whites are supreme. So I'm a white supremacist. I'm also a black supremacist. Sure, why not?
Okay, Walter Block supports white supremacy. Cool.
Right. Well, isn't it true? Isn't it true that whites are better than blacks at swimming and Baroque music?
Maybe on average, sure. Yeah.
Well, of course, on average, there are some very, very good black swimmers, and then there's one or two. There's this guy, I forget his name. He's called the Black Mozart.
Right.
He's really good,
Right.
but there's only one of them. All the rest of the Baroque composers are all white, and there are some white jazz musicians, but most of the really good ones are black. So why can't we be white supremacists and black supremacists?
That's fine. I mean, if that's how you're defining your terms, I don't think there's.
Yeah.
But
Well, now how are you going to decide? We've now established that whites are better at swimming and Baroque music, and blacks are better at basketball and running and jazz. Now, who's better overall? Well, that's a silly question. You can't measure these. These are ineffable things. There's no way to say, well, whites are better because Baroque and swimming is better than basketball and jazz. I mean, that's ludicrous.
Right. No, I would agree.
Well, you're a white supremacist, and I hate you. You're an evil white supremacist. What's the matter with you?
Deny. Okay. I don't want the New York Times to. Well, it could be good publicity. Maybe I'm not against it, but I don't know. But it's yeah. Yeah. So, but yes, but that does seem to be the main thing that people say, because and it is interesting because the left doesn't believe in bodily autonomy. I mean, they pretend they do when it comes to abortion, but then they should support the sale of kidneys. They should support
and legalize prostitution.
I think a lot of lefts do, but sure.
Not all of them, just a few. Some of them do, but most of them think that the women shouldn't be allowed to do prostitution. Now, I'm not talking about coerced, God forbid. I'm talking about, voluntary prostitution. A lot of people on the left say, no, this is exploiting women, which is the exact opposite of their view in the abortion issue, where they say a woman's body is owned by the woman.
Right. No, it doesn't. I mean, if it's a woman's choice, I mean, I don't understand. I mean, people say, well, it could be demeaning, but so could working in McDonald's. But and some women like it. Oh, this person desires me. They want me. Whatever. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. There does seem to be a stigma against prostitution. I don't really understand why. It's just sort of another need people have. No one says, how come you went to the supermarket and you're not out there farming?
Well, look, I have a wife, I have a daughter, I have a sister. I wouldn't want to be prostitutes. I don't go to prostitutes. I don't think it's a great idea. Okay. But if they were, the question is, should they go to jail for it?
Right.
And the answer is no, they shouldn't go to jail for it, just because it's not a nice thing and just because, say, you and I don't favor it.
Right.
Look, I don't like jazz. I like Baroque. Should people who do jazz, should people who do jazz go to jail? Come on, give me a break.
Right. No. I understand. Yeah. Well, no, I guess. Yeah. So that's interesting. But I mean, and you see it sort of with all the COVID stuff. You have to wear a mask. Now you have people like Fauci, so you have to wear two. I think he's just fucking with people at this point. And even if you have the vaccine, you have to did you see that video clip where Rand Paul said to Dr. Fauci that there's been no evidence that once you have a vaccine that you're going to get it again or likely to get it again, and therefore there's no reason that you should have to wear a mask. If you really want people who are weary about getting the vaccine, give them a reward. Saying that life's going to continue the way it was before and they're going to have to wear a mask for the next 2 years doesn't seem like a great way. So if you really want to reduce these things, why are you telling them if they wear a mask? And I'm just curious, in what journals have you found that this does it? And his response basically was, well, you're talking about a different strain. There's many strains and blah, blah, blah. And people worship this guy as a god. He's one doctor. Many doctors think, he's just an opportunist, evil piece of shit, which he is. I mean, no, I'm not going to criticize his motives because we talked about that. But I mean, people worship him like a god. He's many doctors were against the forced lockdowns and all this other stuff.
Well, I'll tell you, worshiping people, I don't worship Rand Paul, but I have him very, very high in my esteem. I worship Ron Paul even more, but I hope that Rand Paul is the next president of the United States. Dan, I promised you a half hour. The half hour's up.
Okay, thank you.
It's always great, and I look forward to the next time we get together.
Sounds good. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.